All right, so it looks like we got three people in here now. If you were with us before, and you notice the stream stopped. I didn't have my laptop plugged in, so that happens, right? But we're back now. We're plugged in. It's charging 14%, so we're getting there. Uh, yeah, it was the USB-C was plugged in, but actually wasn't plugged into to the extension cord down there. Streaming's pretty hefty, so took that battery down pretty quick. In the meantime, I did adjust my audio, so let me know if you're hearing me in the chat. That'd be greatly appreciated. Hmm? Yeah. Yes. No, no, it's all right. What's up? I'll pause it real quick. it's amazing how cheap some of these components are. These sockets are just bending as I'm trying to set them into place. Let's see what's going on here. Hey Eric, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining. So I was telling everybody in the previous stream that happened about 10 minutes ago, it had to stop because I didn't plug my laptop in. But one of my followers who has also purchased this same kit, we've been troubleshooting it together for, the past year, sharing notes and everything. He contacted me today and it's working. He was able to get a full display. Actually, let me see if I can pull it up and read. He sent me a bunch of messages. I didn't get to read them, but I did catch that it was working. So let's take a look here. And see what he says, because the the nice thing is, it validates my issue, right? Because when he first assembled it, he had the exact same issues I did. Okay, so let's take a look. Here we go. So he went through, he replaced a bunch of capacitors, because he actually had some of these explode in place. And I mentioned in a previous stream when I was assembling it that, and maybe you can agree or disagree with this, Eric, but unless I had a piece of equipment that was physically damaged, like actually, okay, there is damage to it, I've never had a capacitor explode just from use, right? If it was damaged, yes, I've had a capacitor, give out the ghost. But this gentleman, I'm still getting permission to use his name, anything, but he had two of these capacitors explode in this kit, just turning it on and running it. Yeah, exactly. Never. Yeah. So it doesn't happen. Um, it does, but it doesn't, right? So that was a concern. So he replaced some of the capacitors. Um, there were other components at onesie twosies he would replace, but he ordered some new transistors, and they're similar to the ones that I have floating around here. I got these off DigiKey. So let's see. He said he got the transistors today. Uh, he had a horizontal collapse. Nope, it works now. Uh, okay, so I see. Let's see how well. Oop. So there is his AliExpress CRT fully working. The eagle eye of you will notice that that stop sign is backwards, and that's because he just swapped the wires. So it's going to be a reversed image until he replaces that. But that's promising. That is incredibly promising that he got it to work. Um, and mind you, for a little 5 inch, let me make the picture bigger. Number one, for a little black and white 5 inch CRT, that looks pretty good, right? There looks like to be some noise at the top of the image, but he was watching this off of VHS. So yeah, that could just be, VHS artifacting. But that looks really good, really, really good. So I'm hoping, we'll see similar results when this is done. Those caps are probably mislabeled to a higher voltage. So likely, that's very likely. Um, when I compile everything and I do the full part 2 video for this, I'm going to focus a lot on capacitors, and I know that there are going to be people in the comments that absolutely love that. Because one, this gentleman and myself, he replaced things ad hoc, onesie twosies, but he really didn't get a result until the end. Whereas I'm just building a whole new thing with new. So I don't think I'll know if it's exactly just capacitors or just transistors. But one thing I will compare is the transistors they sent in the kit. Where's my, I'll put it in my transistor tester and I'll test the good ones I got from DigiKey. We'll compare those results. Um, Another thing that I found that was interesting is some of, where is my bag? So this is the bag of bad caps. Not bad caps. They're the Chicon caps that was sent with the kit. Some of these are, how you have a stripe for polarity on caps, right? And that's the negative side. Some of these had no stripe on them, and the legs were the same size. So if you have a good cap, so let me get a good capacitor here. What are these? Maybe Panasonics? I don't know what this one is. Doesn't matter what this one is, but because it's not El Cheapo. You have a stripe, that stripe there that designates that it's a negative side, but that leg is also shorter. So if the stripe's not there, you know what the negative side of the capacitor is. Some of the caps that came with this kit are not marked polarity, and nor are the legs. They're the same length, so you really have no idea what you're getting unless you test it, and even then you're not. So it's interesting. Did you ask if the image was being affected by audio like yours? So, yeah, well, so these are, yeah, they don't come polarized, but they should be polarized caps. If you look at the drawing and everything else, and yeah, you probably could substitute it, but I don't think that the designers hesitate to use the word engineer. I don't think there was that much thought put into it. Um, I did ask him that, and originally he saw a little bit of that distortion, but it certainly wasn't to the extent that mine was. Um, and I know that there was a lot of really, really good suggestions by people who understand a lot more about how CRTs or audio circuits work than me. But it really did seem that at any volume level, the image was affected. And, you know, the dummy thing is, well, there's a power issue, right? It's trying to drive the speaker and it doesn't have enough and it's pulling that from somewhere else. And, it's not like there's much redundancy built into this board. It's what you see is what you get, right? Um, so, yeah, I'm to be honest with you, I'm not really sure why we were seeing image issues like that. There was, I've been trying to find this website. I think it was like a blogger post or some blog website. There was a gentleman in France who built this kit probably close to 10 years ago. And he had very similar issues, but he was able to fix it. But he didn't mention anything about distortion with audio. But what he did is he didn't use new components. He used the components that were given with the kit, but he rewired. There was an image that he posted at the bottom of the board, and I mean, you wouldn't be able to recreate it, but there were just bodged wires all over the place. And if I had to take a guess, he probably sat down and put a lot of time analyzing the board with a scope, figuring out where voltage drops were, where were dead ends on the board, and making it more efficient. I don't have the technical expertise to do that, nor do I really want to do that because my goal for the part two, at least for this board, is to prove whether or not the design is sound regardless of the equipment provided in it. Because you can buy, and I actually think it was it USA that said I can get this board? You can find just the board itself on AliExpress. So, it could be possible that if you had a tube, a small black and white tube, and you just bought this board off AliExpress or some other Chinese retailer looking at the ZX 2035 branding on it, you could revive a CRT. You could essentially make your own. Because I do think the design is valid. I really do think that the board makes sense as is, and that's just my non-professional electronic knowledge looking at it. It the board itself is not optimized, because it is just one plane, right? You probably could optimize this better and have better current flow, and that's probably what that French gentleman was trying to do by having podge wires. Because if it was multi-layer, yeah, you can probably get a little more efficient flow going through here. Um, but this is just one of those things that you can have many, many issues compounding and not get a perfect result. And I can mess with it and do my troubleshooting, and somebody else can do theirs, and we might get an acceptable use case, but not really know why. So, do I want to put this IC in yet? I probably will. The old board, I had it socketed. Um, do I want to socket it? Where are my sockets? If I can easily find my sockets, I will socket this board. But if not, nope, no sockets there. We'll just solder it in. Because if we need to, we'll just desolder it. But want to make sure I have all the components around it in, because it's very tight. We don't have a lot of work. Will it work with larger CRTs? I don't think much larger, Eric. This is a 5.5 inch. Where's the tube? Yeah. Yeah, so this one's a 5.5 inch tube. So I wouldn't go too much larger, right? Um, yeah, probably not without modification. But I think this would be perfect if you had like you know, one of those mid 80s portable CRT jobbies, where you get like a radio in it. That would probably work it. Um, 9 maybe. It would probably be pretty dim. Need higher tension, so different flyback. Yeah, but then that brings in another question. How robust is this board, right? Because with a benchtop power supply, so it takes 12 volts, right? But with my benchtop power supply, I can drive it whatever I want, right? This one, I've driven this up to 15 or 16 volts, because my thought process was, when I was originally doing the troubleshooting, that again, it was a voltage issue. I wasn't getting enough voltage, so I'm just going to increase the voltage going into it. I got it to 16, and I started to get a little uncomfortable. But the screen was getting brighter, and it was getting more voltage, but that just amplified the distortion with the audio. So I guess it would really depend. I don't know what a nominal voltage for a 9 inch would be. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, as I said, I mean, I can go to Goodwill right now and probably get at least find 3 or 4 small 5 inch CRTs laying around and take those tubes. But if you use the original components, I would be hesitant to put too much more DC voltage through here, because the traces will probably burn up. To be honest with you, um, I think that the board is one of the valuable parts of this kit, but it's also it's decent quality, right? I think you can probably, not that we're sponsored, but you can probably go to PCBWay and have them make a much more robust board with this design. When the video comes out, I will have pretty high quality scans of the front and the back of this board um, with a scale on it. I gave those to Jose already. So, realistically, somebody could just go to PCBWay and have them make this board. Although, for all we know, over in China, PCBWay or somebody else made this to begin with. Yeah, yeah, you could do that. You absolutely could, make the traces a little more robust. I think given the traction, so to back up a little bit, that follower that has been troubleshooting this with me on his kit, he's been there's a CRT repair Discord, and it sounds like I haven't went through the whole thing, but it sounds like there's a few other people in there who have bought this kit and are experimenting with it. Some of them credit me, and I'll take it. If they saw my video and they bought the kit for it, great. Some people had this for a while. I think that we're getting to the point where this kit is getting more traction and more people are buying it or buying parts to it, and it'll be pretty interesting to see what people do to to make this more usable, if it can even be usable. Yeah, you very well might get geometry issues with it. Oh, no, yeah, Jose, let me know when you get the board. I'd be really interested to see, how your experience is with it, mostly shipping. Um, as you know, getting anything from China, especially AliExpress, is a mess. I've been lucky with both of these tubes that everything arrived fine. There's a couple reviews where the tubes would break or different parts would shatter. Um, the second one I was really scared because you see the tube is anchored to 4 points on the shell here. This is incredibly cheap plastic. This plastic makes like mid 90 Macintoshes look like they're made of titanium, right? And one of the brackets broke off in shipping, or was just never there to begin with. And the tube rattled around, but luckily it all arrived, in one piece. So I'm hoping that when they ship you the board, it's not just put in an envelope and shipped halfway across the world. And then from a use perspective, yeah, yeah, exactly. The board should be fine, but either way, I'd be really interested in it. I know this is mostly going to sound complaining, but if somebody were to optimize or redesign this board, just moving some components around would make a world of a difference. There's just not everything's crammed on here, and there's just not a lot of room. Um, and well, especially when I built this one, I bridged a lot of contacts, and before I even powered it up, I just spent a lot of time there with my meter, just making sure that contacts were good, and we were making contacts where we should be, and where we weren't, I'd get it all squared away. But yeah, it's not the easiest kit I ever worked on. For somebody with decent skills, they can probably accomplish it. But I think for somebody relatively new to the hobby, they'd find it frustrating. I think it would be more rewarding if it was a higher chance that it would work right away. Because I mean, how cool would that be, right? Your first big electronics project is building a TV, and then it works, right? Um, I think as Jose and I were talking about this last time I streamed the build, it would be really cool. I think a really cool use case for this would be to get it, fully assembled, fully working, and just have it on like the corner of your desk running and just maybe doing weather updates, RSS feed, something hooked up to like a Raspberry Pi or Arduino and just feeding out useful information, but nothing, nothing critical. I think that'd be really cool to have in an office. Um, and maybe even do a custom case on it where you could see everything, right? Because the case that comes with it, it's just this. Oop, what was that? Something just broke off the case, but that's not a surprise. It's just plain gray. It looks like what you'd expect, like a late '80s, early '90s portable TV. Um, yeah, this would be. It would be really cool for even as is. I think it would look pretty good on like a 2C or maybe like a CPM machine. You know, um, and when I had the old one working, it still works, but when the screen was on, it was really crisp, really really crisp. In the video, I had my Genesis hooked up to it, just playing some Sonic. That looked really good. Um, when I was troubleshooting it, I just had an Apple II plugged in. I wrote a little basic thing just to have crap going on the screen. Um, and the bottom third looked really, really good. Right, the top is where you had all that issues, but the bottom third looked mint, absolutely mint. So yeah, this would be great for some sort of teletype thing, um, or even just maybe like a BBS, right? If you can just have it hooked up to a BBS spitting out information. Yeah, that would be, yeah. So like Jose was saying, it was I think LGR did a video where they had those drive bay CRTs. And it's 5 inches, right? 5.5 inches that would fit in a drive bay on your computer. So you would just need to you would 3D print a case, right? And you can put it in there, and that would be really cool. And then you can, you know, extend a lot of the wires, right? Because as is, you're limited by, your flyback, and then your signals to the yoke. But you could just, lengthen those and then put this anywhere in the case itself. And in all honesty, having a fan on this would be a blessing. The transistors get incredibly hot, hotter than what I think. I'm actually going to take some temperatures on the new and the old ones to see where they are. Yeah, his was amber, and I'm jealous because I'm always a fan of amber monitors. But at this point, I think that's just a really cool concept, and I'd be okay with the black and white one. I used some machines like that, whether it was an industrial environment or I used to work in a television station, and we'd have some equipment. It was DOS, right? But they had a small little. It was in an industrial case, and there was a small little monitor, similar to what you saw on LGR's video, but different manufacturer, different style, but it was the same thing. And I mean, they're neat, right? Especially if you have rack mounted equipment, because if it's just a system you need to monitor, you don't need a 10 or 12-inch monitor. You can just get away with a little 5-inch one and put it in the rack mount, and it's all, encased in a 5.6U or whatever it is. Just makes for a really good experience. So I think all the transistors, I'm hesitant to say defective, they're just bad, right? Um, for one of them, this is the heatsink they provide for it. In normal use, that would dissipate a lot of heat, but like I burn myself, like actually burn myself on this when I touch it. The other transistor here, um, there is no heatsink on it at all. It's just floating there. So I'm hoping that when I use the new ones that I got from DigiKey, the actual good quality ones, we'll see a huge reduction in heat, and maybe you don't even need that heatsink on it. We'll see. But I do want to put those on my transistor reader and see what these are giving me versus what the original ones are giving me. Because capacitor issues or not, if you got bad transistors or if they're not, rated for what they should be, that's going to give you a huge headache. Because out of all of the comments, and again, I mean, you guys know what it's like. YouTube comment sections the Wild West. But the common theme that almost everybody agreed on is it is some sort of power issue, and everybody had their opinion on where it is, but it's pretty obvious it's a power issue. And if you got bad transistors and bad caps, it's probably where it is. Although, like most things, some people are hesitant to blame capacitors, and I'm sure, Eric would agree with me. That's a hot topic in the retro community. Oh no, you don't got to replace all your caps. You probably should. If I'm opening up to replace one cap, we're going to do all of it. Let's be honest. I've seen more systems be saved and brought back to life by recapping than anything else, other than removing your battery. Always remove your battery. All right. And it's another nitpicky thing, but I'll share it with you anyway. It's just the presentation of parts in this kit is a disaster. I mean, literally, everything was just thrown in this bag, and here you go. All the transistors were thrown in there, everything, caps, all in a big mess. And it was disappointing, right? Because a lot of the resistor legs were bent and twisted together, um, which makes me think even more that this wasn't geared toward the general public when it came out. It was more geared toward maybe education or likely assembly. Well, yeah, so when you think about it, if you have old caps, that throws the whole balance off. And when I was in the Navy teaching young sailors about how electronics work and how some of our equipment work, I always like to use water pipe analogies with electricity, right? And capacitors are kind of like a pressurizer, right? It keeps the pressure constant, and if they're wrong or not working or values wrong, it's going to throw the whole system off. Eric, I saw your posts on that iMac. I have never tore one of those apart, and I know you were asking for a cap guide. I dug around. I didn't find anything. Did you find a cap guide for it? I mean, if not, you could easily go through and pull them through. But yeah, I really hope that you can get that get that guy working again. Um, I've used those things, but I never owned a G4 lamp, and I really want to get my hands on them. I think even today, those are really, really slick looking machines made of guide. Ah, it's awesome. Also doesn't surprise me. So yeah, I remember. I don't know who it was, but I was watching a video where they tore apart the G4, and it's more complicated than I would have guessed. But yeah, the iBooks. So I did a video on, let's see, my Snow White. This G3 here. So I did a tear down and upgrade, solid state, maxed out the RAM. I did that video. Yeah, I called it a short guide to upgrading. Lack of better words. And of course, everybody crapped on it. It's like, this takes forever. And then in not next week, but the week after, I have a video dropping for this clamshell here. I just did a video on it again, solid state drive, RAM upgrade, and yeah, both of these are horrible machines to repair. Yeah, Garthos has the same power supply. Okay, that's great. Yeah, no, see, and see, that's great. That's what I love about this community, because if you're working on something, likely somebody else is, and they can help you out. No, Tom, no G4 upgrade cards. I'm not doing, uh, not doing anything crazy like Action Retro. Um, really, I wanted to get both of these into a more working, usable condition, because I'm planning a video on bridge machines, and I want to talk about using, machines that go back so far that can really help you span everything. Um, David's a mod car for the yeah, these things, yeah, these things are a mess. And you'll see when the video is live. I'm really upfront with this. I was not, and nor did I think I could get this machine perfect again. I actually found this on the side of the road. Um, the keyboard's missing keys. I haven't been able to find a replacement keyboard for it. Um, let's close this. The rubber bezel that goes around the bottom. This was all stretched out. I mean, like, it was like 2 inches off here. I was able to get that kind of better, and it's actually coming apart. And then the bezel, the floof here for the CD drive to kind of make it flush with the rest of it, that's just gone. And um, I've accepted that I won't find that unless I find a donor machine. Um, but it runs, right? Both of those are running OS 9.2.2. The OS 9 lives version. That's kind of my favorite, my go-to if I want OS 9. Um, and let's be honest, OS 9 is personally my favorite version of classic Mac. So if you see an old Mac I have, it's probably OS 9. Like, the only exception is my 6400 AV, which hopefully I'll get a video out for Marcintosh. That's 8.6. Yeah, I think 8.6. But that's my favorite Mac. That was So 7.5, I mean, yeah, when you're talking, especially 7, 8, and 9, there are people that are very, very protective and defensive about what version they use. Um, I mean, I like 9. I like 9.9, well 9.2.1, but 9.2.2 because that's kind of like, really polished, right? Um, I like it because it's kind of like a big finger against, Jobs when he buried it when they had their OS 9 burial when OS X came out. Um, but in all honesty, like when I'm restoring machines, unless there are exceptions or a real need case, I like to put the OS that shipped with it. What I would have had at the time. I want to restore it to, you know, the day it would have been new. What would I have experienced with this machine when I got it? Um, you know, Good, bad, or indifferent. That's what I like. And there are some cases, especially some of the weird ones of OS 8, where you almost have to upgrade because of compatibility issues or stability issues. Got too many drinks around here. But I like 9, um, because there's a lot I can do with that with external drives or what is this? External drives or add-ons that make it more useful as a bridge machine. And when I get closer to making that bridge video, I'm going to be probably sending a couple tweets out to see what some of you guys prefer and use, because I think that a lot of people don't understand the importance of having a modern machine or a new herb machine that can easily talk to current day stuff and past day stuff. Perfect example. I have a way over in the corner over there, 98 SE box. It's hooked up to the home network, not the internet, but my intranet. Then a separate one is like a retronet. It doesn't talk to the World Wide Web, but it has that. I have floppy drives, 3 1/4, 5. I got a CD burner in there. It's got USB, and it's onto the network. So I can easily go to my Windows 10 machine, get to that network, bring files over, uh, burn it if I had to. I can burn a CD here, but put it on a floppy, transfer it off. Having machines like that in your collection just making media and restoring or recovering files so much easier, because you know if you were doing this professionally it's a little different, but I've had people come to me with an old machine and say, hey, I need to get files off here, and it's a SCSI drive. Well, you're not going to go to a modern repair shop and they're not going to have a SCSI system set up to pull files off of that. So it's nice to have that equipment, and it's nice to have peripherals that allow you to make media for older machines. Um, One of the things that is on my list to get, and I haven't got it yet, but there's a USB adapter that allows you to plug in a Commodore 1541 drive into your modern computer through USB, and you can actually burn media. Well, not burn media, you can write floppy disks for the C64. And there's still a need for that. There's still a need for actual media. One, it's the experience, but two, even though, so I have a Pi 1541. I'm pointing over there, you can't see it, but the C64 is over there. I have a Pi 1541, and it is a cycle exact device, right? I mean, it acts just like the 1541 would. It's just as slow, it's just as everything, but it's not perfect. There are a few handful of use cases, mostly in the demo scene, where that demo will not run on a Pi 1541. Um, the one that comes to mind, the one that I really want to get to work is there was a Star Wars demo. It's from like 2015, I think. Um, if you run it on a Pi 1541, you'll get like the first 20, 30 seconds, and then it just freezes. Even though the Pi 1541 is cycle exact, or is advertised as cycle exact, it won't work. But if you put it on an actual floppy, the demo will run. For whatever reason, maybe there's some added level of latency using physical media. I don't know. But having equipment like that I think, is invaluable for hobbies like this. Um, Especially on the Macintosh side, when you go back and you have really weird different media formats that you need an older machine like that 6400, or I got a Power Mac G3 somewhere hiding around here. It's nice to have that, right? i761, yeah, 761's great. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think 922 is, really the most useful and the most polished of classic Mac. Um, and I'm sure, everybody will have their opinion, right? I'm sure, I'd like to hear Steve at Mac 84's opinion on it, but I think he's more of an OS 8.6. I think he's an 8.6 guy. But yeah, 922 is really good. Um, you don't have, I thought you had a 1541. What are you using for? Because you have a VIC 20, you have a C64. Are you just using like a Pi 1541 or some other? What's that other one? I can't think of it. What's some other one? Yeah. Okay. SCSI IEC. Yeah. So I look at that. I looked at the SC2 IEC. I was really torn between the 1541 or that one, and I eventually went the 1541 route. But that was when you can get Pi's at a reasonable price, unlike today. Um, I'll keep Tom. I'll keep an eye out for you. Every once in a while up here, um, I see one. Um, and actually, I have two 1541s for my set, so no, you can't have one of those. But actually, I got those down in Groton. That when I was down in Connecticut, I picked those up. So I'll uh, I'll keep an ear open for you. See if we can hook you up with one. Well, yeah, so it is faster, but doesn't that, I think that would compound some problems with compatibility, right? Because, the Pi 1541, that's kind of the standard, it's almost the standard because it is cycle exact. I think that was one of the big things why I didn't get SD to IEC because it was faster, which is great. You get faster load times, but if you had a program that was really relying on that latency, um, what are you going to do? Well, yeah, I mean you're 100% right, man. Like, most of what you need doesn't care, right? Um, and I don't want to sound like some, Commodore software snob because I'm not. Um, but that's really why I went with the Pi because there's a lot of the demos that I really like. There was a period of time when I was working from home where I would just have demos running in the background because it's, I would sit here. This is where I had my work from home equipment, right? And it was nice to look over and kind of have a demo going over there. It's just, ambience for whatever reason. Yeah, but Tom, like, what's like that? That's great, right? Yeah, you're saving like 6.5 minutes of time, but then you lose the experience of, you know, hitting play or load, depending on whatever media is, on Ghostbusters, forgetting that it's loading, and then you get to that laughing screen, and it just scares you because you forgot you had Ghostbusters on and that volume was up the whole way. You miss that, and it's what kids these days need, right? We used to hit play on the tape, and you'd wait 10 minutes, or you'd sit there and you'd have your magazine and you'd write the code of the game 30 minutes later to have a ball bounce across the screen, and then you get bored, and then you wasted all your time writing the code. Builds character. It makes people frustrated. Well, so yeah, exactly. You'd hit load, you'd come back. Yeah, fast load was more of a. I mean, it was faster. Don't get me wrong, but it's not fast load. And another thing, having real media before. There's multiple reasons why I didn't follow through, but one of them was COVID. But I wanted to have a small display at my local library of having an Apple II with some software there, but I wanted it all on original media, right? So like I think the plan was you go to the library and say, hey, I want to use the Apple II, and she'd give you two or three floppies of whatever programs you wanted to run, and I'd have some instructions there on how do you load this, right? Because people don't know, um, and you'd be able to go and experience actually running programs off of a floppy and running from there. Um, and that's something that I would like to start up again. I think there's value in that, and it's one of the things I taught a system analysis and design class and a database class. I'm in between contracts right now, so I'm not teaching them, but I it was interesting to show students how software has evolved over time. And I think, Eric, I think you'd have some really interesting insight on this. But it's interesting when you talk to modern programmers of constraints, because let's be honest, there really aren't constraints. Um, you could pretty much write a program and know that, well, it's probably going to be generally, right? Um, i5 or better, 4 gigs of RAM or better, right? And you're not really concerned about optimization, right? You just throw whatever in there and it works. And if it's bloated, it's bloated, right? Unless there were constraints given by the customer or really weird system requirements, right? I think that a lot of programmers just don't think about that. And what compounds it even more is a lot of modern day programmers, they'll just go to GitHub, find something they need, not understand what all the code is there, copy paste it, and there you go, right? And if there's wasted RAM because there's some background processes, 9 times out of 10 it's not that much of an issue because the systems today that are running are have a lot of RAM, right? Even 4 gigs, that's on the low side, you know. So when I tell them about some of these constraints and that was everyday life programming on even the GS, but C64, Apple II, 8-bit, 16-bit machines, you had a lot of constraints that you had to optimize your code, and you really had to understand on an intimate level what each line did and how it interacted with each other and how you can improve it because you were confined, you know. That's a good point. Yeah, you're not paid to write efficiently. You just what can we crap out, right? And if it works, it works. Um, and I get that, right? Because some organizations, that's just how it is. I mean, we're kind of guilty with that with what I do, which is just get it out, right? Just get it out as quick as you can. Um, yeah, yeah. So that's Chat GPT. That's another really interesting addition to this, right? Because you know old old coders, you know, you had to understand everything. You had to understand the hardware and the software side of it and how it worked. Whereas today, you just compile some stuff together. You don't know where the code comes from. There's I don't want to get too much into info security, but you have security issues with that because you don't know. You might pull some code to do some mundane thing, but unless you go through every single line and understand what it's doing, you don't know is this transmitting data off? What other background processes are there? And because we're not concerned too much about system requirements, system resources, um, you don't need to optimize it, right? And Chat GPT. I mean, I've messed around with it. I want to spend more time with it, but I saw somebody post, oh, Chat GPT writes a Commodore 64 program, so I tried it, and it worked, right? And it gave, and it seems hit and miss depending on how you word your, I don't even want to call it a question because it's not a question. It's not you're having a conversation with it. Word your query. Um, it gave a very, on one of them, it gave a very in-depth explanation of, I think was, give me code to have a sprite bounce across the screen, right? Something simple, right? And it gave a really good explanation of what was going on, what commands meant. Yeah, that's a good learning tool. But at the same time, you can turn that around just like GitHub. Um, ChatGPT, it's getting its information from somewhere, and if you were to ask it to give, hey, I need a Python code to do X, Y, Z, right? Again, unless you're intimate with all of that code in every single line, you don't you don't know what it's giving you, and you don't know what that um, information could be transmitting, could be copying, and I mean, I don't want to sound all conspiracy theory, but you have to. I mean, part of my day job is security, right? And you need to understand what your systems are doing and what the code's doing. Um, oh, yeah, that's the other thing, right? It, we still kind of touches what you're saying, Eric. We when I would teach system analysis and design, we would talk about the OSI model, um, but it's almost irrelevant anymore when you think about it because a lot of programmers and a lot of companies that write code, whether it's small companies, big companies, it's almost just like a mill. They just keep rolling stuff out, and you don't need to understand all the layers, right? Just the customer needs X, Y, and Z, and you're going to deliver it, and that's going to be the end of it. And I would write some of these practical things where, hey, um, Joe's small business, and I need a program to do this, but here's my system requirements, and you'd always get one student who has real world experience, and like, hey, we don't get this. Somebody asks for a program, they really don't talk too much about system requirements because again, you assume, right? I think it's safe to assume that anything you write is going to be, i5 or better, 4 gigs of RAM or better, Windows 10 or better. That's kind of what you're going to find in pretty much any office anywhere. When was the last time a developer had to manage memory? I don't know, 1993, maybe. That's probably even too late. Um, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. One of the examples I gave to my students, and I had a video that touched on it. So again, I'm pointing over at the Commodore 64. I assure you, I have there's a BBS that I dial into, and all it does is you can read news on it, but modern news. BBC, CNN, CNET, Hackaday, a couple other things, right? Um, but that interface, that system, the software, the the OSI level, it accomplishes the same thing that I can go to Chrome right now, open up a tab, go to BBC and read the exact same article that my Commodore 64 does, but Chrome is going to take up like 2 gigs of RAM, you know, just to pull up the website and read it. Now, mind you, I mean, the Commodore 64 it's not, obviously it's not processing the video and it's not showing the images, but it's accomplishing the same thing, and it's doing it within the limitations that a Commodore 64 has. Um, and when you think about it, if the customer desire was, I need to read news articles in an RSS feed, right? By no means am I saying that we should put Commodore 64 to do it, but you know, a program could do the exact same thing on the Commodore 64 on bytes. It's such a small requirement. But if we built that same thing on a modern system, whether it's Windows, Mac, or even Linux, it's gonna be a memory hog. It's gonna have all this extra bloat in there that may or may not actually contribute to accomplishing what you need to accomplish. And then the concern is, what else is going on? Because the programmer that did it just went to GitHub, pulled some source code, or they have the library. That's my favorite part. Developers always have a library, right? It's like this magical box that they pass around with each other with all this code in it that they can easily plug and play. Um, and they don't know what's in it, right? I a buddy of mine would always get on his case because he'd show me some code that he wrote for something, right? Um, I say, all right, cool. Walk me through line by line. What does all this do? And the problem is, I think a lot of modern day programmers don't really think about it, line by line or action by action. It's chunks, right? Because this chunk does X, this chunk does Y, um, and this is how they remotely interact with each other. But you're not dialing in to look at exactly what is going on, and that's why you have so many breaches and so many weaknesses, and you have all these bounties to try to clean up programs. But if we just slow down a little bit, built them right in the first place, and trained our younger programmers to understand the intricacies of what's going on, you wouldn't have these issues. For you, we don't have to with the machine level. I mean, that's a good point, Eric. I mean, you can you can argue it either way, but my methodology, and this is, I would tell my students this, and right, wrong, or indifferent as my class, so whatever I say goes. But yeah, nobody will pay for that time. That's huge. Um, but I think it's a personal pride thing, and that varies by individuals, right? But you to be really good at your trade, no matter what it is, programming, woodworking, fixing obsolete equipment. Um, you really need to understand, almost beginning cradle to grave, everything going on in there. Um, and maybe the right answer isn't having everybody trained in all levels of hardware to software, input to output, the whole 9 yards, right? Maybe having certain people, maybe like doing QA checks, right? But then we're just overloading those people. Yeah, it's yeah, Eric. I think it's we can we can go back and forth. There really isn't one good answer, right? Um, but and just watching your videos, Eric, and seeing your interactions, I think you and I see eye to eye on a lot of these things, right? If I'm going to be doing something, um, I want to make sure that the product I'm delivering is as perfect as it can be, and that I understand as much about it, because the more I learn about a system or a component or a machine or whatever I'm working on, I can better troubleshoot it and I can streamline it. Um, I remember getting young when I was younger. I would work on a lot of small engines, two strokes. I love that stuff, right? But I only got good at it by understanding how every component worked, and then putting into it, well, if this wears out, or if the spark doesn't spark all the time, or whatever, right? Then if you can identify faults, then and it's one of those things. You get a really good mechanic. They will drive your car. They'll listen to that sound. They'll feel the wheel and say, "Oh, yep, CV joint done. I know it." That's experience. That's experience, and that's invaluable. Banking, yeah, that's another thing, right? I mean, just think of vulnerabilities in that. I mean, that's people's money, that's livelihood. Um, and sure, there are protections, whether it's government or local insurance or anything else, but it's huge, huge liability. You know, um, yeah, yeah. That's Eric. I'm a real big fan of that whole. It's cliche, right? But you always say you want to be a lifelong learner, right? And I tell guys at work, and I tell some of my sailors in the Navy, right? When you say or you think that I'm done learning or I know enough or I'm at the peak of where I need to be, one, you're wrong, right? And that attitude just perpetuates everything. If you're humble enough to know that there's always something more to learn, and even if it's not learning something directly to your job or whatever, right? Just getting your brain into learning more and being a better individual and gaining new skills. That's huge. That's huge. Oh, AI. Okay, okay, Jose. I see where you're going. Yeah. Man, that's a whole other can of worms, right? Um, I think that there was an article. It was somebody posted it on LinkedIn, right? But it was actually a pretty reputable site where, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of jobs replaced by AI, um, but I think it'll really shine if it augments your position, right? Where the AI shouldn't be interacting, and again, just my opinion, but I think the AI really shouldn't be interacting directly with the customer in any field, but it can assist, um, a teller or an agent or anybody else into serving the customer better. Um, but it's still new. Let's be honest, right? It's still new. It's going to take a long time to shake out and really have it fall in where it needs to be. Yeah, I can see, I could see burnout with that, Eric. I absolutely can. Um, it's it's interesting, right? When people move from, especially in IT, right? When you move from programming to management, especially somebody with the experience that you have, it is, it's a different game, man. It really is. In my day job, I do some management, and yeah, because then you're dealing with you know, being that SME, that subject matter expert for whatever it is, but then you throw in HR issues, timesheet issues, pay issues, the whole nine. It just goes out, man. Um, but yeah, I think AI, right? It like anything, right? You really have three options, right? You can either ignore it, and that's hard to do. And this doesn't go with AI. This goes with anything, right? You can ignore the problem or the change and just live your life. You can be against it, and you can be really vocal. This AI is going to ruin everything and take all of our jobs. Um, or you can work with it. I'm not going to say embrace it, but you can work with it because, like a lot of innovation, I don't see AI going anywhere. It's not like you're going to say, "Hey, this is a bad idea. Let's cut it off," right? Because it's already getting so integrated into our lives and into businesses. And if you use it correctly and you implement it, there's going to be growing pains, and people are unfortunately going to lose jobs and positions are going to disappear. Um, it's like we don't really have operators anymore. There's not a string of people connecting your phone calls anymore. And yeah, people lost jobs of it, but I think that we can all agree that telecommunications is better from it. Um, yeah. Where instead of software, what should be? Yeah, 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 yeah. It's kind of off topic, but it's yeah, it's relevant. I was talking to a guy at work the other day, and it's interesting. I think because of all the innovations um, especially in the last 15, 20 years, right? You know, we're kind of going back to full circle to mainframes and dumb terminals again. Because what do you need, especially in a business environment, right? You know, what do you need a powerful machine for? We're updating a lot of our systems to at least i7s, I don't know, something stupid like 12 or 14 gigs of RAM, right? Um, but I'm thinking like, the vast majority of people are just using like Microsoft Word, Excel. Um, could we, it's not the right answer, but could we substitute that with a bunch of Chromebooks and probably still accomplish the same thing? Yeah, as long as you have a really good back end on, and we're kind of getting there with Office 365, right? Um, but yeah, it's really interesting. We're returning back to that where you're going to have somewhere this really strong mainframe, or in this case, a cloud somewhere, right? And a bunch of dumber terminals or lightweight machines that you can do everything you need, right? And a lot of that's being driven by more telework requirements and just cost savings as far as equipment, because you don't need, the vast majority of employees don't need really heavy duty machines unless they're designing something, or video editing, graphic design, CAD, something like that. I mean, if they're just crunching numbers in a spreadsheet or writing reports, yeah, you don't need some fancy wham a dime machine. So it's interesting. It's really interesting. I remember this was probably 2006. Yeah, it's probably about right. I was working at the help desk at my university, and my boss and really good friend at the time, we got a first netbook. It was like a really early Chromebook, right? It's just one of those things where it's pretty dumb, but it relied a lot on something somewhere else, right? We really didn't call it the cloud then. But I remember like we were really confused, like why would we want this? Why would we want this really really weak machine that didn't have much storage online? Because it was such a new concept then. And now, I mean, most schools around here, and I'm sure it's where you guys are too. A lot of the schools just have Chromebooks. They have their profile, and they go in and share documents, and it's great because then you can just log in at home, and there is everything. You just log in with your profile. SaaS, yeah, yeah, you're not wrong, Eric. And the issue, you're right. It's driven by profit. It absolutely is. And what bothers me with software as a service is you don't, in a lot of cases, you don't have the option to actually have it, right? Um, it's all subscription based, and some of it's nice, right? Because I can put in an IT request at work, and you know, oh hey, so and so needs physio for this project, and we can get them licensed, and we can turn it off, right, and take it away, and you know sometimes that's cost saving for the company, sometimes it's not, or you have something really egregious like you know insert any Adobe product here that's come out in the last 5 years, right? Um, but what bothers me, and I think a lot of this is because I do so much with retro stuff, right? We're going to have a point in time, 10, 12 years down the road, where systems or software is just going to be useless. You won't be able to use it, right? Um, you know, Switch over to video games because I think that's an easier analogy for a lot of people to understand, right? If you have a Switch or PS5 or insert anything where you're buying digital content, um, one, you don't really own that, right? But what's going to happen, you know, 20 years down the road when, some kid buys a Switch from a Goodwill? what's he going to do with it? Nothing. Unless he has the media, and even then, there are some things that are online exclusive. You're not going to use those. Whereas, my Atari 2600 over there just works. The Nintendo just works because you get all of it. Even software for my, Windows 98 machine over there, it just works. Where, you know, down the road, um, you know, somebody's going to get a machine with like, Adobe Premiere on it. It's not going to not going to do anything, right? You're going to turn on, it's going to want to call back to validate itself or something. Um, yeah, it's all driven by profit. And I mean, don't get me wrong, no software hardware company is designing their equipment for, collectible market 20, 30 years down the road for, retro collectors of the future. But um, there is no regard for future proofing or using it like that or just having weird contingent cases. There was there's a software we needed to use in my day job in a very specific way where um, in use that machine could not be connected to the internet, right? Just where it was, it could not be connected to the internet. Um, so the program couldn't run, right? We're paying all this money for this program, but it couldn't run because that program, upon startup and every so often during use, had to phone home to make sure it was still a valid license. I was like, well, what's the point? You know, um, and I think a lot of that is where you have, executives making decisions and not, programmers or engineers, people who actually really know the use case. Yeah, yeah. I mean, music's a perfect example, right? I mean, I have, I have a lot of vinyl over there, and I have a lot of physical media. But I do have a decent amount of digital media that I buy on my phone, right, through iTunes, or we buy a lot of movies on Netflix or Amazon or whatever for the kids, right? Um, and part of me, like, I mean, I'm gonna buy it, right? If the kids want to watch insert cool kid movie here, right? We'll get it for them, right? But when you buy it in a digital media, like, I know my son's not going to be able to watch that 20 years down the road, right? you know, if Amazon or Netflix are even around, is that purchase gonna survive all of that? Whereas, I can get any VHS from my childhood and it still works because it's a physical copy. I own it. And it's not like, if Amazon ever were to go under, right? Um, I don't see them giving you the option to download all your media, right? That's just silly. Um, yeah, Eric, I'm gonna be close enough to. I got an early morning, but thanks for joining, man. Really, really appreciate you. Great conversation. That's one of the great things about doing this, right? Don't get too much soldering done, but we got we get some really good conversations. Thanks for joining there. Netflix, no, yeah, yeah. That's the same thing, right? It's um, we got man, we're rocking Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus right now, and I would say that upwards of 98% is for the kids. I can't tell you the last thing that I watched, one by myself, but that I watched just because I wanted to watch it, right? Um, the wife and I would watch like Call the Midwife, BBC show. Um, but because we're in the States, I get it later on, right? So they're over in Britain, they're watching it, normal right now, but I got to wait until it does its run over there and we get it over here unless I VPN in. But I watch that. Um, that's about it. I don't, maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I really don't watch a whole lot of things. Vast majority of what is watched in this house is my kids. Um, well, I take that back. I watch Bluey. I really like Bluey. My kids watch Bluey. I think I like it more than them. So, yeah, Bluey. That's what I watch. Yeah. Um, it's interesting, right? And again, we're kind of going full circle, right? Because you had a lot of piracy, right? I'm I'm guilty of that, right? Who isn't, right? Throw the first stone. But um, you know, once for me it was Hulu. That was the first one I really got into. Once Hulu came out and then Netflix, I was like, all right, I don't need to. It's like that meme, right, where the kid dusts off the pirate hat, right? You know, when Netflix first came out, that's all you needed, right? And Hulu was still free at the time. You had some ads or something. I don't remember how it worked out, but like it was great. But now, um, you know, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, um, CBS, so all the network ones, Pigeonhole. If you want to watch this one, you need a network. Insert, 10 other streaming services here. Um, it's just silly, you know. Um, and you're seeing more of a rise in piracy now because people wanted to cut the cord. You wanted to get away from cable, right? So you go to the streaming service. But now, to be able to watch what you want, you need five, sometimes more of these streaming services, and then you're paying more for cable. And it's ridiculous. You cannot find. I want maybe I'm simple, man, but I want one service where I can go and just watch everything, right? Just give me one fee of like I don't know, $60 a month, maybe a little more, where I could just do everything, right? Because a lot of these things, a lot of my friends, they'll subscribe. I mean, my wife will do this where, she'll subscribe to Hulu to watch a season or a series of whatever she wants to do, and then she'll unsubscribe until the new one comes out, and she'll subscribe again. And that's just, you know, um, it works. Don't get me wrong, but like you shouldn't have to do that, right? You shouldn't have to do this. Um, see, Christopher says we would like to kind of broadband Christmas. We spent Christmas watching. Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have that backup, right? Unfortunately, it's still a lot of my childhood VHS tapes are still at my parents, and that's states and states away. But you know, my in-laws are close, so we could get some of my wife's childhood VHSs if we needed to. But yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the thing. Unless you have something local, I have somewhere. I have an old hard drive full of perfectly legally acquired videos. Um, that would be an option. That would be an option if something like that happened. Yeah. Hey, Geek with Social Skills. Thanks for joining. This has been all over the place. Originally we were soldering some of this, and then we were talking about memory management with programs and source code and how to optimize it and piracy and all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. So I'll give you the real quick rundown because I'm not sure how long I'll be streaming more, but as I'm sure I hope you saw my AliExpress CRT video that I released a year ago. Yeah, copy that floppy, man. Yeah, that's we touched on some of that. We touched on some of that. So I have a new board. Right, I bought the kit again, but I'm building it with quality parts. So other than the flyback, the inputs, controls, and this really unique IC. Um, I have all worth electronic capacitors, new resistors, new transistors, the whole 9 yards, to build the kit with new good parts, but keeping the board, the flyback, and the CRT itself. And earlier today, I had a really interesting conversation with one of my followers on Reddit. He saw the video when it came out a year ago, and he thought, "Man, that's great!" And he bought his own kit, and he assembled it, and he had the exact same issues that I had, where the screen wouldn't fill up the whole way. He had a little bit of distortion with audio, but not to the extent I had. And it was nice, right? Because it validated my issue, right? So then I know, well, this wasn't a mic issue; it was a kit issue. And then he's very determined. And he went and he got an oscilloscope and he learned the skills and he got better meters and he's really started diving in and troubleshooting and learning how these boards work. And that's great. That's perfect. That's kind of the point of this, right? Um, but over the past year, we've been talking a lot. We've been troubleshooting, comparing notes. And today, he sent me a message, and we'll pull it up and I'll show you. Um, it works. So there is some distortion you'll see at the top of it, but mind you, he's watching this off VHS, so that's just VHS distortion. But that's his kit. He's over in Europe, and he's watching a video on VHS. Um, the image is inverted because he wired it wrong, but that's fine. So it works, and that is awesome. He replaced some capacitors. He got new transistors. He did very similar things to what I did, but instead of essentially starting over from scratch, he replaced it as he found faults. Um, and there were some shorts in his board. Some of those related to component failures. So um, I have a really good feeling that this board will work. Probably jinxing myself now, but I have a really good feeling this board will work first time. So really big thanks to him. So whenever I get the video out, we'll be talking about him and some of his troubleshooting. That got me where I'm at now. And then to this is snowballed in some of the CRT groups, and I know Jose has taken a really good interest in this. So he'll be getting just the board, not the kit. So I'm really looking forward to see what he can throw together with it, because it's a really um, it's an interesting project, right? You know, um, building your own TV and then watching some of the use cases from that. So really looking forward to seeing what we can, as a community, what we can throw together to make this to make. Another thing I'll have, when the video releases, I'll have links to download decent I'm not going to call them high resolution, but decent resolution scans of the front and the back of the board unpopulated, because the board's simple enough. It is single layer, right? There's not a whole lot going on here. Um, you can design this board, and I would be interested if somebody with better PCB experience than I have, if they could optimize this board, right? Because I think there are some issues, and it could be optimized, and it could be better. Um, this would be perfect. I mean, clearly it is perfect. We do have an antenna on here, so it is perfect for analog signal. Yeah, in the states here, we got rid of that. Man, 12 years ago? No, more than that. More than that. 15, 20? Maybe 20. I don't know. I used to work at a TV station. I think I told this story in a previous stream, but we'll tell it again because what else are you gonna do? You're watching. Um, but no, I was master control operator the night that we switched from analog to digital, and that was interesting. That was really interesting. Seriously, I'm Chris. I might use that. I might use that as the title of this. um, so thesis. No, I know I'm probably pronounced. So it was the ship thesis, and for those of you who might not know, the idea was right. Greek was it Greek? Is it Greek mythology? The point is, so you had this ship, right? Think of like a museum ship, and as time and things where you replace things, and eventually it gets to the point where no original part of the ship is left. Everything has been replaced over time. So the philosophical conversation is that still the same ship, right? Um, and modern examples, right? I'm gonna have to Google this because I want to make sure you obviously have the USS Constitution in Boston, Massachusetts, the oldest commissioned warship still afloat. There's a caveat there because HMS Victory is older, but she can't float anymore. She's in dry dock. But you have a tall ship in Baltimore. Um, why can't I remember her name? Um, Constellation. Yes, Constellation. It's a sloop of war. 1851. She was built. But for the Constellation, just like the ship Theseus, so much of that has been replaced. Is that really the Constellation anymore, right? Um, and with this kit, right? So much of this kit is new. Is it really the same AliExpress kit anymore, right? You know, if we optimized the board, um, and we used another tube. You can throw any 5-inch tube in here, right? Any black and white tube should work, right? As long as it's not too large. Um, is it the same kit anymore? Chris, I love that. I might use that. I use that as a title. Um, but yeah, look the ship thesis up. Really interesting. It's one of those things that make you think, right? Because um, the Constitution, one of the original six frigates of the United States Navy. Um, a lot of her has been replaced, but there is still parts of her that are original. Her keel is original. A lot of the brass is original. Um, the There was a copper plating below the waterline that I think Paul Revere was made in Paul Revere's shop. Right, that's all original. Right. Um, so that's interesting, right? So she'll always be the Constitution because there's still original parts in there. Yeah. CRT. We can have a lot of fun with this. We can have a lot of fun with this. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take a picture of the chat, and that's gonna go in my working folder. Uh, Perfect. I have working folders for all my projects, and I have notes and pictures in there, and we're gonna throw this in because oh, that's awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. That is perfect. Oh man, um, jeez. All right. Well, it's 11:14 East Coast time. I do have an earlier day tomorrow for my non-retro day job. Thank you guys for joining. Really appreciate you tuning in, watching the stream tonight. Um, if you're not subscribed, please do. Retro Tech or Die here on YouTube. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at either Retro Tech or Die or RTOD. Um, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate your subscriptions, your liking, your sharing, your commenting. It means a lot to me. And we got 4 people watching right now. So if you watch the channel tomorrow we'll give you guys a backstage on this. So tomorrow, February 9th at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, United States, we're going to have part 2 of the PlayStation 3 that I attempted to repair. I'm going to be honest with you, it's a little disappointing. The video does not end, well, it ends how you want it to, but there were issues in the middle, and it's really more of a lesson of backing up. So February 9th at 11:30, you can check the PS3 Part 2 video. And then February 23 at 11:45 Eastern Standard Time, I have a interesting restoration video on this iMac G3 clamshell. This was a roadside pickup, and we're not going to get it perfect. But yeah, no spoilers. It'll be good. It's going to be a disappointing video. I opened it up with a disappointing video, but it's more of fulfilling a promise because I told everybody I would get part 2 out, and here we are. Really long time later, part 2. All right, hey everyone, I wish you a wonderful night. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends. I really, really appreciate it. Catch you next time.